You guys might not see this, but I think a lacquer rag or something was set on here a while back, and see how it wrinkled the paint up? So we're gonna go through, buff it down and doctor it up, but give you guys an idea of what the whole thing looks looking like. And right now I'm just trying to get everything down to a level, an even level. And sometimes when your paint gets real hot, it'll start sticking to your sandpaper, so it just tells you that you're sanding in one spot too long. See, the trick is let the sandpaper do all the work. See how it's rolling it up? See how it rolls it up? As I was saying, because what happens is your sandpaper creates friction. Friction takes this dust and gets it real hot. And then eventually it just starts melting it together. And this is some 100 grit. Anybody knows anything about 100 grit will tear stuff up. It'll leave scratches and everything, but I'm using 100 grit to get everything that's really rough smoothed out, so when I hit it with some 220, it'll blend it better. It blended in a little better, and I've been using this piece of paper for a while now, so it's definitely broken a little bit. Because if I use a brand new sheet of 100 grit on this, it'll scratch the crap out of it. So sometimes it's easier to just take a piece, like 2 pieces of 100 grit, rub them together, just to get that real sharpness out of it. So if you're having a problem with your sandpaper being too sharp, take another piece of sandpaper and kind of like buff them together for maybe 3 or 4 times, and it'll dull it down a little bit. Because the 100 grit's what I want, because it'll cut through things a little faster. And when you sand stuff like this, make sure that you go out far enough so when you come over this way, you can tie into it. See the humps and bumps, but he likes that stuff, so I'm not trying to take too much of it out. I'm just trying to get everything down to a nice smooth level. And if you're looking for like a really fine finish, I'm talking like mirror finish or glass finish. This is a good example to show you. This is what we call cutting the paint. There we go. See the shiny parts? Like right here, right here, here. What you want to do is keep sanding until you get all the way down there and it's all flat like that. Oh, sorry about that. But you want to keep sanding that whole area until you get everything down to this level. This is called cutting it. And you can see how it's still shiny. You can see the glare now. There you go. But you can see how it's still shiny. And this other stuff's kind of dull. That means the duller stuff is taller than the shinier stuff. The shinier stuff is sitting lower than this area. They're like two different levels, you know what I mean? So what you want to do is get this layer down to this layer. And we call that cutting it. This is the same thing you do on a body panel or a kitchen cabinet or a lacquer job. See how this T20 is coming back through and really smoothing it up. The 220 is really coming through smoothing it up. And it's the same thing. But 220 is not, it's not something that you use to cut. 220 is something that you use to smooth. You got your 100 grits that cut through stuff, and 60s and 80s, and that's built to cut through stuff, like get right down to the problem. Your 150s and 220s and stuff like that, and even higher, like 300s. That's for smoothing it. That's for top level. That's for your surface level sanding. You got your tougher grit. It cuts through all that. But you got this right here that sands, like it polishes the top level. Everything on the surface. So when you put another coat of paint on top of that, it'll be as smooth as the surface that you're putting it on. And that's all you're doing is you're painting. Like, no matter how much work I put into this, it's only going to be as smooth as what's already there. So if I wanted to come through here and give us a brand new finish, I would either sand the crap out of it, or I would come through and patch it all. I just skim it and then sand it out. But you can also use primers too. Any kind, like some primers you can put on there and then sand the primer down and give that a nice finish, and then put your paint over top of that. But you're still gonna have your off levels. Like, and what I mean by off, everything, what I'm talking about by saying things that are off level is because, like, your natural wood grain flows. And when you got wood grain like this, and you got wood grain that sits in there like that, you got to sand through this top level to get to this bottom level. And once you get a flat surface and everything's flush, that's when you put a nice layer on top of that. Like, even though I'm sanding this like this, when I paint it, there's still going to be nicks and dings and stuff like that, because there's scratches in this that's deeper than what I'm trying to cover. But I'm just trying to get the melted paint out of it. So I'm trying to sand the paint that got See, what happened was they put a lacquer rag on here. The lacquer rag melted the latex. And then when they pulled it up, it stuck through the rag. So it really messed up the finish. And I got to sand all that down to a nice clean level. Sanding is very simple, but there's also like, there's some people that I just don't let sand. They just can't figure it out. They'll sand clear through things, and like, it's really common sense. But for the most part, some people just don't like to do it. So they'll do it like a really bad job, so you don't let them do it again. But once I get down to a decent little level here and get all the real rough stuff out, then I'll sweep it, and then I'll put a coat of, I'll put the first coat on it, and then I'll put a final coat over top the whole seal. But it's not a bad thing to go over top of this whole casing or this whole seal with some 220 just to get, because I already went across it with some 100. So now I'm going to go over top of it with some 220. And if you got any chipping or any cracking, it'll flake it off there, and then you can buff that out. See how the paint's sticking to it? When you get stuff like that, just take a Hunter grit and don't scrape the crap out of it, because all you're gonna do is tear your 220 up. But you can see how it took it off. And I normally don't sand across green, but this is painted, so it doesn't matter right now. Now, if this is stained wood, you gotta sand with the green. And that means if you gotta sand this way for an hour, that means you gotta do what you gotta do. But that is one nice thing about sanding latex, because latex is it's a solid. It's not stain where you gotta see the green and everything else, because the worst thing you can do when you sand any type of green is sand across the green. It'll put a scratch. Normally it'll scratch it, and it'll take forever to sand that out. But right now I'm just trying to clean this edge up right here. And even though this don't look like it's doing much, it's going to help a lot more. It's going to help a lot more than not doing it. But this right here is what my main concern is, making sure that, yeah. See how, what you see is the actual outline of, what you see is the actual outline of the rag, but the actual surface level itself is down where we need it. And if you notice, see it's chipping, I'm gonna take that 220 and sand that out and get that rough edge out of it. And that's all you're doing, is sanding that rough edge out. But sometimes that chip will travel. This one here's a little better. See what I was talking about? this edge. That edge is what you want to get rid of. This is the same process you do on a car body. If you get a rock chip or something, like say you've got a rock chip, it's the sharpness of the crack itself that throws your eye off, just like this one here. It's not an actual chip, but it's the sharpness of that catches your eye. That's why the body shops will spray primer over top of this and then sand the primer down and let the primer stay in there, but give you a nice little coat over top of it. It just covers it up so it does. And the reason why I keep stopping, because I don't want to get that too hot. If I keep getting it hot, see how it's rolling up on me? That's good enough. But normally I would just patch this stuff. It's easier to fill out. It's easier to fill the crack in, or it's easier to fill the chip in with patch and then sand the patch down to it than it is to sand this out, because paint's harder than patch. But if you look at it in that same scenario, paint is harder than patch. So if you drop something on it, it'll ding it. It's softer than paint. So, and like I said, paint is only as hard as what's underneath of it. I'll go get the sweeper. I spent 20 minutes on it, so I'm allowed 20 minutes.